Looks like your company is going under. The words were spat out with a look of sheer schadenfreude. Our company has always been looked down upon by her. Being in charge of dealing with her, I've been on the receiving end of this kind of abuse for a while. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. Even if it's tough, you're just a secondary contractor after all. Why not look for a new job if your company's sales go down? After placing a $300,000 order and canceling it at the last minute, and then saying something like this, she is really out of line. Her attitude and the way she treats our company are something I can't deal with on my own. But then, a chance encounter showed me a way to avoid the $300,000 loss. Are you kidding, huh? It's your company that's going to go under, I suppose. What? Thus, Carol Smith was about to face some serious trouble. I'm Emily White. I'm turning 48 this year. I was married once when I was younger. But I got divorced 5 years ago, and now I'm single. I had a child in elementary school, but when my husband and I split, he took our child, and I moved out. I used to be a housewife when I was married. My husband was domineering, and I spent my days walking on eggshells around him. After the divorce, I hated the thought of marriage and couldn't imagine remarrying. I decided to live on my own. But as a single woman with a past as a housewife, I had no reliable source of income. That's when I stumbled upon a job ad for a web development company and managed to get a position as a secondary contractor. It was tough at first since I had no knowledge in the field. I was over 40 at the time and worked hard not to be outdone by age. Thankfully, I managed to keep up with the younger employees. Then, I was recognized by the sales manager and transferred to the sales department. Dealing with clients was challenging, but I found that I was good at sales and enjoyed it. However, we were trading with Dynamic Creations Inc. as our client, but its president's daughter named Carol Smith was incompetent, rude, and looked down on secondary contractors. I was troubled by her attitude many times. I've been feeling a bit off lately. Being at the age for menopause, my OB/GYN advised me not to stress too much. But the stress seemed to only increase no matter how much I tried to alleviate it. As soon as I arrived at work, there was a call from Carol. White speaking, how can I help you? It's Smith. The web modifications you did are causing problems again. Can you fix it quickly? Get an engineer on it. It seemed that a part of the web page we worked on for their company was malfunctioning, and they wanted it fixed quickly. But that issue was already fixed last month, and after rechecking, there were no problems. Didn't you tamper with it somehow? Of course not. It's your company's incompetence that's causing this. Fix it fast. Reluctantly, I explained the situation to our engineers and asked them to handle it. However, they reported that the malfunction was not due to anything they did, but rather someone else's interference. Ms. Smith, I have a report. According to our engineers, the malfunction is occurring in a part that our company didn't handle. Maybe someone else tampered with it? What are you talking about? I won't accept such an excuse. The malfunction caused a lot of inconvenience to our customers. I didn't want to admit any fault on our company's part without evidence, but decided to apologize to resolve the situation. I'm sorry. Oh well. It's not a big deal this time. We'll be billing you for the consignment fee. What? What are you saying? Do it for free. She hung up unilaterally. It wasn't our company's fault. Carol, this president's daughter, pretends to know about the web but complains like this, making our engineers reluctant to work with her company. According to the engineers, it seemed likely that an inexperienced engineer had made some sort of error that caused the malfunction. Even though our company's engineers didn't cause the issue, we were called in and ended up not getting paid for it. I kept getting complaints from the engineers, and she blamed me unilaterally, so I was about to burst with stress. That evening, I decided to go to a bar I had wanted to try for a while, hoping to unwind with a drink. I planned to enjoy a quiet drink alone. I ordered my favorite food, sipped my preferred drink, and was pleasantly tipsy when I noticed two women enjoying their drinks at the table behind me. One of them was Carol. Maybe she was with a colleague. The woman with her was elegantly dressed. You know, the employees at that secondary contractor are so incompetent, it's frustrating. The woman with her just nodded and smiled, lightly agreeing. Secondary contractor. Were they talking about our company? There might be other secondary contractors they work with, but I was curious and listened in. By then, my buzz had worn off. So, this weird auntie is my contact at the secondary contractor. You'd think salespeople would be more stylish, right? But this auntie looks so ordinary. The other woman just chuckled without comment. Carol kept talking. That auntie, she's divorced and used to be a housewife. It's so uncool. A woman who doesn't care about her appearance. I wonder what she's thinking. It's kind of amusing to me, a good stress reliever. It was definitely about me, divorced and a former housewife. I don't pay much attention to my looks. More like, I can't afford to spend much on it. So I always wear the same kinds of clothes and hardly put on makeup. I couldn't stand being there anymore and left the bar. Unnoticed by Carol. The bar, meant to be my stress reliever, ended up being another unpleasant experience. Back home, exhaustion washed over me. I looked at my face in the mirror. Tired, with dark circles under my eyes. I should put on some makeup. I opened my makeup box. Just powder and one old lipstick. I couldn't even remember when I bought them. I opened my closet. It was filled with plain clothes. I sighed. When I was married, I couldn't buy anything with my husband's money, and after the divorce, I had no assets and was desperate for money. I never had a fulfilling life as a woman, balancing work and personal life. But Carol, who doesn't know me, shouldn't be saying such things about me. Tears fell as I looked in the mirror, lost in thought. The next day at work, Carol called again, and I was stressed out from the start. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you. Can you come to our office right away? Yes, I understand. I canceled my other plans and headed to her company. I've arrived. Oh, sit down. I have some good news. Good news. Frankly, good news from she made me feel uneasy. We're starting a new project, and I want your company to handle it. What kind of project? It's completely unrelated to web development. We're thinking of distributing free catalogs to boost sales. Can you handle the production? Our company isn't a printing company, but we have the technology to do more than just web development and advertising. We might be able to use that. I'll check with our company first. By the way, how much are we talking about for the contract? Well, considering everything including subsidiaries and affiliates, it should be around $300,000. A $300,000 order is a significant deal for a secondary contractor like us. It's pressure, but it could also be a big opportunity. I immediately consulted with our president. He tends to leave decisions to the staff, and he quickly gave the go-ahead. It's that kind of company, but I thought I could figure out the production process from scratch. Ms. Smith, regarding our recent discussion, our company will take care of it. Thanks. Let's get the contract sorted then. I think we need about 140 copies. And then, things moved forward. I started preparing for the catalog production, reaching out within the company and to acquaintances. It cost money, but completing the project would bring in $300,000. I managed to make a sample first and showed it to Carol. This looks good. Proceed with it. She approved it surprisingly quickly. The production seemed to be going well. But on the day we started printing, she called and said, "Actually, I've decided to cancel the printing. Consider the contract null and void." What? This means your company is going under. She said this to me with a triumphant tone. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. It's troubling, but you're just a secondary contractor. Why not find a new job if your company's sales drop? I reached my breaking point with stress and anger. I won't forgive this. I muttered to myself. Canceling a $300,000 order on the day of, it's more than just a loss. Our company is small, and being a secondary contractor, we're always at risk of going under. But the printing was already underway. The catalogs would be finished in a week. I couldn't sleep that night. How will I explain this to the president tomorrow? The next day, feeling demotivated, I couldn't bring myself to go to the office, so I spent my time at a cafe and walking around to escape reality. That's when I bumped into one of my mom friends from my housewife days. Olivia. Emily? Is that you? It was a reunion after a long time. Olivia had given me advice on amicable divorce and was someone I relied on a lot for child-related issues. Despite being the same age, she was like a big sister to me. She used to work as a legal advisor for a corporation, but now works freelance, focusing on educational outreach for fraud victims. Emily, we haven't seen each other since your divorce. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. I'm working hard now. You're doing well. We ended up chatting for so long that we decided to continue our conversation over drinks at a nearby bar. I couldn't help but vent about my work frustrations to Olivia, whom I hadn't seen in a while. Then she said, "Is the company you work for a secondary contractor for Dynamic Creations Incorporated? How did you know?" I was their counsel for a while, so I'm familiar with the inside story. I remembered that she had been a legal advisor for various companies and knew a lot about different industries. So, what's the real deal? Being a secondary contractor, we can't really oppose them. But their demands are often unreasonable. What's the industry's reputation like? It's bad, just between us. Really? Yes. It's not so much the company, but the president's daughter who has a particularly bad reputation. I thought so. I had always thought Carol was just a mean person who looked down on us because we were a secondary contractor. In my venting session, I decided to tell Olivia about the sudden cancellation of the $300,000 order. So, you're dealing with Mr. Smith's daughter, right? Do you interact with her a lot? It's not just interaction, it's been really tough lately. I told her everything about receiving the $300,000 catalog order, researching techniques, getting cooperation from within the company, and just when I thought we were about to complete a significant project, it got canceled on the day of. I couldn't stop talking. Remembering it all, I felt so frustrated that tears came to my eyes. Emily, that must have been hard. Are you okay? Wipe your tears. I have to report this to the president tomorrow. I might get fired, and our company's revenue will suffer. Well. She thought for a while. Leave this matter to me. What? Just tell me what you want. I'll think about it. There might be something I can do. Who would have thought someone would offer to help like this? I was grateful she was even willing to listen, let alone take it on as her own issue. Tell me what you want. First, I want the contract to be executed properly since it's a big deal for our company. If that's not possible, I want compensation of $300,000. I conveyed my desperate hopes to her. Understood. Anything else? I want Carol to suffer. It's a personal grudge, though. I hesitated to share such resentment with Olivia, but I did it anyway. Okay, got it. Could you report the facts to your president and ask him to contact me? Contact Olivia from the president? What does that mean? Does she have some connection with our company, like being a legal advisor or something? Should I have the president contact you? Yes. Your company's president knows my husband. You didn't know, did you? She smiled confidently, as if to say, leave it to me. I really appreciate this connection. I'll do as you say. Let me consider how to thank you later on. After that conversation, I immediately went back to the office and explained everything to the president. As expected, he was furious. Not with me, but with Dynamic Creations Incorporated. After I mentioned Olivia, he seemed to understand the situation and said he would contact her, then I went back to work. The printing of the catalog had started. There were 140 copies. What to do with this inventory? Then I got a call from Olivia. I've talked with your president. Leave the rest to me. I'd like to come and see the catalog you're currently making. I have the president's permission. Okay. I'll be waiting. About 10 minutes later, Olivia came to the company. She looked at the catalog. Dynamic Creations Incorporated's achievements are all lies. But I'll buy these. What? If I buy them, your company won't suffer a loss. Then, pretending to be an employee from here, I'll visit Dynamic Creations Incorporated under the guise of being your new contact. We'll talk more later. I decided to leave everything to her. I've got an idea. First, we'll pretend you're quitting, and I'll be your replacement to greet Carol. Me quitting? Yes, she looks down on secondary contractors, including you. If you quit, she will target me next. That made sense, but what was her plan? My interest was piqued. That could be true. From there, it's my turn to shine. Just wait and see. Okay. I'll act like I'm quitting. Thus, I went with Olivia to greet Carol. Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia Wilson. What's going on? Ms. White, what does this mean? I'm resigning, effective immediately. Really? So, Ms. Wilson is your replacement? Then Olivia greeted her. Yes, I look forward to working with you. After a brief silence, Carol repeated, You're leaving, huh? Well, it makes sense after losing the $300,000 deal. Yes, I'm leaving. Because of you. Olivia interrupted our conversation and took over. Both of you, please calm down. Ms. Smith, about the catalog, you wanted to cancel it on the day of printing? Yes, I forgot I had already ordered from another secondary contractor. It's just a small company, so stopping the printing on the same day should be feasible, right? Unfortunately, the cancellation was not possible, so the printing is complete. We will send the invoice for payment. Carol paused, seemingly unprepared. That's impossible. Another secondary contractor is already printing it. That sounds like you just forgot you had ordered from another company and panicked, canceling our company's order. I cornered Carol with the realization of her mistake. That's irrelevant. I can't pay your company $300,000. In that case, the printed material becomes our property, and we'll take responsibility for sending it to your company's affiliates. If you're not charging us, that's fine. My boss won't find out about my mistake. Here's the list of companies. We'll arrange the shipment right away. Thank you. I bid farewell to Carol as I left. Thank you for everything, Ms. Smith. Hey, White. Blaming me for your resignation is unfair. It's not my fault. You're going bankrupt anyway. Are you joking, huh? Your company is the one going bankrupt. What? Olivia echoed my sentiment. Your company is the one facing bankruptcy. We left Carol's company. On our way out, Olivia was arranging to send the catalogs to the companies Carol was dealing with, using Carol's company name and hers as the sender. In fact, the catalogs were blank inside. We managed to stop the content from being printed on the day of printing. A few days later, what kind of spiteful thing did you do by quitting? Carol called me furiously. What's wrong? The companies are angry because the catalogs we sent are blank. I'm getting non-stop complaint calls. Imagining her overwhelmed with complaints, I almost laughed but held back. I'm sorry. That's not enough. Thanks to you, deals I was about to close are getting canceled. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That's unfortunate. I hung up the phone unilaterally. I felt strangely uplifted. The next day, Carol made an unexpected visit to our office. White, I have a request before you leave. What is it? I doubt there's much I can do. I'll pay the $300,000. but I need you to tell the companies that the blank catalogs were a mistake. If we lose these deals, I don't know what will happen to my company." Seeing her weakened, I pressed further. "The catalogs being blank was a terrible mistake. I'm sorry, I had no idea. It's not about that. Please contact the companies and apologize, saying it was your company's mistake. Please, do something." "I won't do it. I've been persistently mistreated by you, and I almost suffered a $300,000 loss because of you." She started crying. "I'll pay the $300,000. That has already been paid." "What?" "This is a company issue, so I explained the situation to your father, the president, and he has already made the payment." Carol realized that her father, the last person she wanted to know, was now aware of the issue, and her attitude changed. "I'm sorry, it was all my fault. If this gets out, I won't be able to stay at the company because of my many mistakes. I feel terrible for causing such a loss to the company and to Dad. Please forgive me." "You know, if your father finds out about this, he'll be embarrassed in front of the entire company." She was on her knees, crying. "I don't want to embarrass my dad. What should I do? Tell me, Ms. White." While inwardly thinking it's not my problem, I watched her crying. "Shall I tell your father about all the harassment you've inflicted on our company?" "I'm sorry. Please, no more. I'll apologize as many times as needed." She continued to cry. "Ms. Smith, you've always looked down on us because you're the president's daughter, right? Be honest." She shook her head desperately, denying it. "You think we, the secondary contractors, would believe that?" "I didn't mean it that way. But if it seemed like that, I'm sorry." I watched her pitiful figure for a while, but as she didn't stop crying, I left her and went back to my work. By evening, she was gone. "She's gone. My retribution is over," I muttered to myself and headed home. Carol, due to the catalog incident, faced a barrage of complaints from companies and was apparently fired by her father, the president. Her company suffered significant losses and a drop in revenue, as expected. Thanks to my friend Olivia, I was saved in many ways. Having actually resigned from the secondary contractor, I'm now helping with Olivia's educational outreach, and through her referral, have managed to step up to a sales position at a larger company. I'm truly grateful to her and treasure our connection as I continue to work hard. You're definitely younger and better than Kaylee. Yay, happy! Let's date a bit longer. Exhausted from my business trip, I was greeted by such words from my husband Vince and my sister Celine. After mocking me, I started to hear their unpleasant voices. For a moment, I thought about yelling at them. Instead, I quickly regained my composure and took out my mobile phone. Then I slightly opened the bedroom door and recorded decisive evidence. They were too engrossed to notice. How dare you two belittle me like this? I won't forgive them. I've been insulted too much. No need for mercy. I sent the evidence I recorded to Carl, Celine's husband. We prepared to confront them. When they saw us, they were shocked. Kaylee? Why are you here? Right. And why are you here too, Carl? Kaylee told me. At those words, Celine glared at me. To her, I extended an envelope. Their faces turned pale upon seeing its contents. My name is Kaylee. I'm a 33-year-old working mother, raising my son Alex while working hard. I'm not blood related to my parents. My mother was infertile and adopted me from a foster home. You are such a sweet child, my dear Kaylee. Yes, we're so glad you became our daughter. I'm deeply grateful to my parents who accepted me. A year after I was adopted, my mother got pregnant with her own daughter after fertility treatments. The baby was named Celine. Since then, we've been raised as sisters, not related by blood. Kaylee, what are your plans for the future? Don't hold back for us. I actually have a university I want to attend. Then, I left my hometown for college. I didn't return after graduating, joining a company in Boston. I've been successful in my field of expertise. For about 10 years, I've worked hard every day. Kaylee, can I talk to you? One day, my boss called me in. The discussion was about recommending me for a chief position. I joyfully accepted and returned to my desk. You seem happy, what's up? Then, my husband Vince spoke to me. He was younger than me, and I was his mentor at one point. After the mentoring period, he actively pursued me. Actually, it was love at first sight. Will you date me? Overwhelmed by his enthusiasm, I agreed to date him. Eventually, we married when I got pregnant. We then had our lovely son, Alex. The early days were tough with work and child rearing, but Vince's support made it enjoyable. On one holiday, my family went out together. Is that Kaylee? Oh. Can it be? Celine? A young woman called out to us. At first, I didn't recognize her, but soon realized it was my stepsister Celine. Long time no see, Vince. Hi, Celine. You guys bring Alex, so it's a family outing? I'd love to join. Her words made me uncomfortable. We were shopping for our son. If she joined, she'd want to go here and there, making it hard to buy what we needed. Today is a day for the three of us to shop leisurely. So, you can't join. Why not? You're so mean. Ignoring her whims, I pushed Vince and Alex's back and started walking. Still complaining, she tried to follow, but we managed to shake her off and entered a nearby store for lunch. Oh dear, I can't believe we ran into each other here. As eating, I reminisced about the past. Our parents had loved both the adopted and biological child equally. They had cherished me more than ever. It's because Kaylee came that the baby did too. Kaylee brought us happiness. Therefore, I intended to treasure Celine too. However, my feelings didn't reach her. As she grew up, she became demanding. Kaylee always gets everything. I want what Kaylee has, too. I want what Kaylee has. I really want it. Give it to me. It started with a keychain, though it was something I bought matching with a friend. Under strong pleading and seeing our troubled parents, I gave it to her. That seemed to encourage her. After that, she kept saying everything was unfair and tried to take things from me. Luckily, our parents were on my side and scolded her, and the age gap limited what she could take. I'm being harassed by my sister. Unsatisfied with the situation, Celine targeted my friends next. She went around, saying, I'm bullied because we're not blood related. She was good at crying, and my classmates started avoiding me. Some even said terrible things or harassed me. That's impossible. Kaylee has always adored Celine. One of my friends, Dina, who bought the matching keychain, believed in me. She fought back against the classmates who harassed me and warned Celine. Don't lie. So, Celine and Dina never got along. After distancing from Celine when I went to college, life had been peaceful. But recently, she got married and started living nearby. I sighed at the unexpected encounter. Mom, are you okay? Worried, Alex spoke to me. I smiled and brushed it off. Are you really okay? You're worried about Celine, right? While resuming eating, Vince asked me. I told him about Celine, especially something I hadn't spoken about until then. I didn't know she was like that. Vince and Celine had only met a few times, at family meetings or our wedding. I also hadn't brought up Celine in conversation before. Why not vent to Dina? I don't know Celine well enough. Dina? Yes. How about next week? I'll take care of Alex in the meantime. I nodded to his suggestion and contacted Dina right away. A week later, I finally got to talk to Dina. Sorry to keep you waiting, Kaylee. No, I should be sorry for the sudden call. I heard about the encounter and rushed to investigate. When I mentioned Celine, Dina said and pulled out an investigation report. I was impressed with her skills. Dina used her observational and acting skills as a detective. Her abilities were top-notch. Impressive as always. Let's see it. I looked over the report. It detailed Celine's recent actions. Even after I left home, she continued to play the villain and did as she pleased. She played the role of the poor little sister, tormented by her adoptive elder sister. It seemed she used that narrative to attract men, but those relationships always ended quickly. I can't believe such good parents ended up with a child like that. Reading it, I couldn't help but feel astonished. Hey, how are you doing with Vince? Suddenly, Dina asked me so. Tilting my head, I replied that everything was as usual. He's really involved in parenting, and he's even taking care of Alex today. Responding so, she looked somewhat troubled. Again, I tilted my head. Is something wrong? No, it's nothing. If that's the case, it's fine. She denied my inquiry. After chatting for a while, we parted with smiles. Oh, Alex and Vince? Huh? Hi, Mom. On the way home, I met up with Vince, who was leading Alex by the hand. Were you guys out somewhere? Yeah, we thought of getting out of the house for a bit, so we went shopping. Oh, really? Did you have fun? At my question, Alex nodded with a hesitant, yeah. He tilted his head. He was sticking close to me without saying anything. Come on, let's get home quickly. Though puzzled, I was hurried home by Vince. Throughout, Alex stayed close to me. What do you want for dinner? I'll prepare it. Vince said, entering the kitchen. Should I help? No, it's fine. Can you keep Alex company? He seems to have missed Mom. Thanking him for his words, I turned to face Alex. Then, as if deciding something, listen, Mom? He began to speak in a voice low enough that Vince couldn't hear. Shocked, but determined, I made a decision. Soon after, I received a call from Dina. Kaylee, I need to talk to you about Vince. She told me a truth, and we decided to take action. I wonder if you can go with him. It happened shortly afterward. I was asked to go on a business trip. When I consulted Vince, go ahead. He replied casually. As for Alex, can I leave him with my parents? That's fine, but I can take care of him? You come home later than me. I'm worried. Acknowledging my concern, that's true. He agreed. With Alex's consent, I left him with my parents. After explaining the situation to them, they said, leave it to us. Then, I left Alex with them and headed to the business trip location. I planned to go with a colleague. That's the situation. You might need to help. Understood. I discussed various things with him and made plans. I told Vince I would be gone for a week, but the work finished early, and I returned in 3 days. Then, I'll see you soon. After parting with my colleague, we each headed home. I didn't contact Vince at that point, but called Dina. After receiving some advice, I steeled myself and entered the house. I'm home. I called out, but of course, there was no reply. Vince should have been at work at that time. However, I sensed someone in the house and saw familiar coats, including his. So, I stealthily entered the house. As expected, voices came from the bedroom. You're definitely younger and better than Kaylee. Yay, happy. Let's date a bit longer. Exhausted from my business trip, I was greeted by such words from Vince and Celine. After mocking me, I started to hear their unpleasant voices. For a moment, I thought about yelling at them. Instead, I quickly regained my composure and took out my mobile phone. Then, I slightly opened the bedroom door and recorded decisive evidence. They were too engrossed to notice. How dare you two belittle me like this? I won't forgive them. I've been insulted too much. No mercy was needed, I suppose. I had sent the evidence I shot to Celine's husband, Carl. Thanks for the photo. He finally made a move, huh? Carl hurried over as soon as he could. Seems he also reached out to Dina. Having them both come gave me a sense of relief. Well, shall we storm in? We got ready and headed to the scene. What are you two doing? The two of them were shocked to see us. Kaylee? Why are you here? Right. And why are you here too, Carl? Kaylee told me. At those words, Celine glared at me. I responded by handing her an envelope. Answer my question too. That's when Vince said, looking my way. I thought it was a hassle, but I decided to respond. My business trip ended in 3 days. I was also accompanying on the trip as her colleague. In fact, Celine's husband Carl was my colleague as well as Dina's real brother. So, I was able to discuss the situation with him during the trip and even managed to call Dina. Are you satisfied? Why don't you check the contents? Dina urged with a laugh, but her eyes weren't smiling, those made them both shudder. When they saw what was inside, their faces turned pale. This is the infidelity I caught on camera. Good shots, aren't they? Right, the contents were of their affair. They never expected such evidence to surface.
Why is there such a thing?
I've been investigating you for a while.
What?
Actually, Dina had been investigating Vince for a different case. Vince wasn't just involved with Celine, but also with his coworker at the office. Eventually, the coworker's parents suspected him and happened to hire Dina's detective agency.
You've been messing around with others too.
Upon seeing the name, Dina realized it was my husband, Vince. She started investigating after sensing his betrayal. The investigation revealed that Vince had been approaching various women, not only Celine but the other female staff.
Can't you be satisfied with just me?
Vince got pale with trembling. Whereas, Celine was angry at the revelation of his other involvements. You're hardly in a position to complain, Carl said coldly, silencing her instantly. He glared coldly at Celine. What are you even doing, even being married to me?
That's, well.
Celine scrambled for an excuse with teary eyes. Standing next to Carl, Dina was making her arms crossed. Their angry expressions were so similar as siblings. Thinking so, I began packing.
Kaylee? What are you doing?
I'm packing because I'm divorcing you. Vince asked fearfully, but I told him clearly.
Wait for me. Forgive me.
He begged, but I ignored. I'll carry your luggage. Oh, thank you. My pleasure. I'll have your luggage sent to your parents' house. Carl helped me with my luggage, and we left the house smiling. Although Vince and Celine screamed after us, Dina scolded sharply.
Enough already. You idiots.
They immediately silenced with a scream. Leaving them behind, we left the house briskly. After I parted ways with Dina and Carl, I returned to my parents' house where Alex was. They were indeed cheating. I had to tell my parents that Celine was having an affair with Vince. Hearing that, they sighed deeply and apologized to me. Don't apologize, it's not your fault. I had been informed about the affair by Dina beforehand. The day after she told me, my parents shared it with me. I can't keep this to myself. The evidence from Dina alone would have been enough for a divorce settlement. But somewhere in my heart, I wanted to believe in Vince. That's why I didn't file for divorce until I saw it with my own eyes. Alex, were you a good boy? Feeling sorry for my parents, I changed the subject. Then, my parents smiled. He was as good as you. A really kind boy. Alex smiled happily, being praised by his beloved grandparents. I was glad I had left him here. Can we stay here a bit longer? At my request, my parents readily agreed. A few hours later, while chatting with my parents and eating snacks, Celine barged in.
There you are. It's all your fault. I'm getting a divorce from Carl. If only you weren't here.
She yelled at me, glaring, just as I was about to hug scared Alex and counter.
Get out! You're no daughter of ours.
My parents shouted back at her instead. Then, her attention shifted to my parents.
What are you two talking about? I'm your real daughter. Our daughter is only Kaylee. You became unbearable, spoiled by my mother. We can't think of you as our daughter anymore.
My parents responded in a dismayed tone to Celine's words. Certainly, it was our grandmother who led Celine astray. She never accepted me as an adopted child, and doted on Celine as her biological child. As a result, Celine never listened to our parents and used me, the adopted one, as she pleased. I always wanted to be true sisters with you. Celine seemed angered by that.
You always act so superior. Even though you're not a real child, it's annoying. You even have a child. I couldn't even have one with Carl.
She ranted. True, she had no children. But that was her own doing. After continuing relationships with men, she became infertile. You have no right to say that to me.
Shut up.
She raised her hand to me. Just as I braced myself, I saw Alex step between us. This is bad, he might get hurt.
Enough.
Before she could reach Alex, my father grabbed her hand and threw her out. Watching her leave, I hugged Alex. Don't do anything dangerous again. Sorry, I just wanted to protect Mom. As my parents said, Alex really was a good boy. I thanked him and stroked his head. After that, Celine apparently reluctantly went to Vince's place. Carl and I demanded a settlement from them both in the divorce. They had multiple partners, so the amount was substantial. Vince got sued for marriage fraud by his colleagues too. Dina updated me on their situation later. Furthermore, Vince was caught cheating during work hours. Of course, he was fired eventually. Before he was resigned, he approached me once.
Please, Kaylee. Help me.
He was lying in wait outside my company and clung to me as I arrived. Ignoring him and trying to enter the office, he kept obstructing me.
If you're going to cling like that, why did you cheat? I know you approached them. No way.
True, Vince was the one who approached first. That day, after I went to bed, he found Celine's address and visited her during a business trip. She was at home and welcomed him. Kaylee made you upset yesterday, he had said, and they apparently started their affair.
You confronted Celine for me, Dina.
After we each returned home, I told Dina about Celine's visit. Knowing that Alex was almost hurt, Dina got angered and went to the thrown-out Celine's place. She was caught by Dina without a chance to escape. It seemed she spilled everything when confronted, due to her trauma.
Did you really think I'd help you? You know, I was serious about you.
What is he even talking about? If that was the case, he shouldn't have cheated in the first place. As I was thinking so and about to call the police on my mobile phone, please stop.
I will sue for business obstruction.
Just then Carl arrived. He pulled me to his side and gave Vince a cold look.
You are not needed in our company.
Huh? In fact, Carl is the next president of the company. He was training to become that position under my mentoring.
You're kidding.
Unaware of that, Vince looked at him in disbelief. It's no lie. Just leave. From his demeanor, it was clear he wasn't reconsidering. Disheartened, Vince left. On the other hand, Celine had knew about Carl being the next company president. Moreover, she was genuinely in love with him. Getting divorced was really hard. Carl said that, and I patted him on the shoulder. He smiled at me, looking a bit troubled. Then later, I was called by the current president.
Excuse me.
Thanks for your time. A great help for Carl. And it's a pity about Vince. He began to discuss the matter, looking somewhat complex. Troubled by the recent events, Carl would be training at a subsidiary for a while. Indeed, physical distance from Celine might be better. So, I want to entrust you with the project that was planned for Carl. Of course, the promotion to chief we originally planned remains. I felt honored and accepted. Without Vince, I could still live well. My parents agreed to look after Alex as I would be busy. In fact, Vince had never looked after Alex when we were married. I was actually staying with Grandpa and Grandma. Alex was left with Vince's parents' house, and it seemed they weren't happy about it. He secretly told me that day. I vowed not to let him go through that again. Fortunately, my parents, who were not related by blood, cherished him as their own grandchild. With no more worries, I dedicated myself even more to my work. It seemed Carl successfully distanced himself from Celine. He's doing well in the subsidiary. I had a tea party with Dina when things settled down. She told me about Carl.
Carl has always been hardworking. He'll be fine.
Yeah, but could you visit him sometime? I'll take care of Alex. She asked, and I tilted my head. I didn't mind meeting him, but the way Dina said it, it seemed like she wanted us to meet alone. Well, you'll understand once you meet him. She smiled mischievously. I didn't understand the situation, but I decided to meet Carl. Dina was looking after Alex at a distance.
Were you surprised I wanted to meet? Yes, well, I've been wondering how you were doing since then.
Thanks to you. It's still new, but I'm trying my best. He spoke with a smile. I felt bad for the trouble caused by Celine, and wanted him to find happiness. Then, looking serious, he gazed at me. I like you, Kaylee.
What?
I was shocked by his sudden confession. Apparently, he had liked me from the beginning. However, due to the age difference, I only saw him like a brother. So, he had given up on me. I got together with Celine when she comforted me. Celine knew he liked me and took advantage of it. After I married Vince, Carl completely moved on and decided to marry Celine. I did love Celine. I don't know what she thought or why she approached me, but she was a support. Celine must have truly loved Carl too. That's why she chose to marry him among many men. Therefore, she was so furious at me for the divorce. When I found out about Celine's betrayal through Dina, I was quite shocked.
Carl, you've had it tough. But I'm sorry, I can't feel that way yet. Besides, I want to prioritize Alex now.
I understand. I'm not in a hurry for an answer. Carl said that with a laugh. Feeling his loving gaze, my heart raced. Mom, are you done talking?
Yes, we're done.
I turned my attention to Alex, who had run up to us. Picking up the now heavier Alex, he smiled happily in my arms. Alex. I hope we can continue to be friends. You and I are already friends, aren't we? Carl is Alex's uncle, and they often play together. With a nod from Alex, Carl replied with a smile. You're right. Our time together might lessen, but I hope we can stay as close as before. Sure. Alex nodded with a smile, and Carl gently stroked his head. Then, Carl would come to see us whenever he found time. Alex had grown quite fond of him, who paid more attention to him than Vince ever did.
Kaylee! Alex! Oh my goodness. Why are you here?
While playing in the park, the disheveled Vince appeared. Apparently, Celine had been rampaging daily since her divorce from Carl. Both having paid a hefty divorce settlement, they couldn't afford to replace the furniture and appliances Celine destroyed. Thus, he looked unkempt. Dad's not around anymore, huh? Let's be together again, the three of us. I don't need you, Dad. Alex cut off his words firmly. He then froze.
What?
Are you saying you hate Mom and me?
No, I'm not.
Carl is here for us now. So, we don't need you anymore. Rejected so clearly, Vince left quietly. Watching his lonely back, I turned back to Alex and Carl with a smile.
Alex, would you be happy if Carl became your dad?
Yes. I'd be happy. Alex nodded with a beaming smile. At that, Carl's eyes teared up.
Now, no crying if you want to be a dad.
Sure. Let me ask again. Please make me your husband and Alex's dad. I nodded with a smile at his words. After being rejected by us, Vince seemed to lose his soul. He even quit the part-time job he had been doing. Of course, Celine was furious, but she just let it slide. Finally fed up with Vince, she left and disappeared into the night. Vince was apparently taken back to his parents' house. It seems he really did love me, after all. I heard about Vince from my former in-laws. When they asked if I could possibly reconcile with Vince, I replied promptly,
I already have someone who cherishes both Alex and me.
Hearing that, they quickly gave up.
Hey, Alex. Do you want to see your former dad's parents?
No. I don't want to see them for a while. My former in-laws, who had neglected Alex due to frequent babysitting, apologized after learning the situation. However, Alex seemed to want to keep his distance. With Vince also at their house, we decided to become estranged. We no longer need them in our lives.
Carl is coming over next Saturday.
Really? I have so much I want to talk to Dad about. I stroked Alex's head as he said that with a smile. After that, we started dating. Then, when Carl returned from the subsidiary to the head office, we decided to move out of my parents' house. We planned to live together in a new home, the three of us. Please marry me.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Soon after Carl's proposal, we got married. My parents and Dina blessed us. May you be happy this time? And Alex expressed his joy. I'm happy Carl is becoming my dad. I'm sure Carl will definitely make you happy. Dina had seen Carl's love for me and his heartbreak. That's why she encouraged him when I divorced Vince. I know both Kaylee's and Carl's good points. That's why I want you two to be happy. Dina had always helped and supported me. For her sake, I must be as happy as possible.
So, let's go out for a celebration drink next time. Sorry, I can't do that.
Huh? Dina looked bewildered as I smiled and gently rubbed my belly. Realizing what it meant, she beamed. Could it be?
I'm expecting our second child. So, I can't join you for drinks. Wow. I'm as happy as if it's my own.
She genuinely seemed thrilled. Her laughter made me smile too.
Alex is excited too, saying, "I'm going to be a big bro." Wow, that's so like Alex. He'll definitely be a kind big brother.
When I told him about having a little sibling, he was overjoyed. Carl was the same, lifting me up in excitement until, "Don't strain Mom's body." Alex scolded him.
So, Dina, I want you to help us choose a name. Really? I'll think hard about it.
Dina instantly started pondering, looking thoughtful. Watching her, I smiled. Now, our family, Alex, Carl, the baby in my belly, and I, will build a home filled with laughter. I pledged that in my heart. I'm in Charleston right now. What do you want for a souvenir?
What? Charleston? Are you that far away and coming back today?
I'm staying in Charleston today, heading to Savannah in Georgia tomorrow, and planning to return the night after tomorrow.
Is Jackson with you? What about work?
Jackson and Lily are off today and tomorrow, and they took the day after off work too.
Lily's there too?
Yeah, it's a family trip. So, I'm counting on you to house sit, lol. Mason left for a trip with Jackson and Lily, leaving me behind. This was problematic enough, but Mason had another issue up his sleeve. Also, you're handling the trip expenses, lol.
What do you mean?
I borrowed a credit card from your wallet.
You did what?
I've been patient with Mason, but this was unforgivable. However, when I checked my wallet, my anger quickly subsided, and I burst into laughter.
Actually, that credit card is LOL. What?
Mason is about to have a very unpleasant time. And after returning from the trip, a hellish scenario awaits him. I'm Emma, a 56-year-old office worker, and my husband Mason is 57 and works part-time. You might wonder why I married a part-timer like Mason, but he wasn't always one. Mason was laid off at 30 during a company downsizing. I thought Mason would find a new job quickly, but he had a proposal for me.
Our baby's due soon. I've been thinking, what if I become a house husband until childcare settles down a bit? That way, Emma, you can return to work smoothly. For a few years, you mean? Mason, are you sure about taking such a long break? Even if my return to work is smooth, won't it be hard for you to find a job later? I've gained some experience and skills so far. The layoff and birth coincided. Childcare can be a legitimate reason for a career gap. It might affect my job search, but I think I can manage it with some effort.
Probably, Mason was right, considering his view. I know Mason has always been diligent at work. His layoff wasn't due to a lack of ability, but simply bad luck.
All right, but you have to do the housework properly and get back to work once childcare settles down.
I agreed to Mason's proposal, albeit with some reservations. However, this decision led to a turn for the worse. When our son Jackson was born, Mason kept his promise and worked hard at both housework and childcare. Thanks to that, I could return to work smoothly and focus on my job. But as Jackson turned 3, Mason and I often clashed over parenting.
Are you giving Jackson sweets again? He won't eat his meals, you know. And you bought him another toy, right? You're spoiling him too much. What can I do? Jackson wants sweets and toys. Should I make him suffer? That's just cruel. Learning to wait is important. What if he becomes a spoiled brat who can't handle not getting his way?
Mom's angry again. She says no to sweets and toys. I don't like Mom. Since I'm working and Mason is a house husband, Jackson spends more time with Mason. And Mason, spoiling Jackson, has made him a complete ally. It's sad not having my child on my side, but given the situation, it can't be helped. But apart from parenting, there was another issue.
Mason, you didn't clean up the lunch dishes again?
I'm busy with childcare. You wouldn't understand, being at work all day.
I get that you're busy, but this happens every day. I end up washing and cleaning up after work. Can't you at least soak them? They're always dry and hard to wash.
Mom's being fussy again.
Scary, huh? I don't like Mom. Mason gradually stopped doing housework. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, he left everything halfway, and I ended up doing it all. I never intended to dump all the housework on Mason, just because he's a house husband. I used to help out, but Mason grew dependent on my assistance and eventually stopped doing anything. Well, Jackson's starting preschool soon, and it's about time for Mason to look for a job. Maybe he's just cherishing his time with Jackson before work starts. Thinking this, I stopped nagging Mason about housework and childcare. But even when Jackson started preschool and then elementary school, Mason didn't start job hunting. Hey, Mason. Jackson's 10 now. Isn't it about time you start looking for a job? He's still only 10. Besides, if I start working, Jackson will be home alone till night. Don't you think that's sad? That's why I said we should practice leaving him alone for a bit. But you said it wasn't necessary because you're home and never let Jackson practice staying alone. I can't leave Jackson alone. On the surface, it might seem like Mason is saying the right things. But I know better from his past actions. Mason is just using Jackson as an excuse because he doesn't want to work. He used to be diligent before being laid off, but it seems he's grown accustomed to not working and doesn't want to start again. Moreover, I'm just a regular office worker and I don't earn that much. I understand you don't want to leave Jackson alone, Mason. But you know living off my salary alone is getting tough. Our savings we had until we were about 30 are dwindling. If this continues, we might not be able to afford food. Okay, I get it. But still, leaving Jackson alone. How about you work part-time while Jackson is at school? That's reasonable, right? Mason, reluctant to work, finally agreed to my suggestion and started working part-time. With Mason working part-time and us living frugally, we managed to escape the deficit. Though problems remain, at least for now, we can live a little more comfortably. But when Jackson became a high schooler, our problems increased. Mason, where's this month's money? What? I already gave it to you. There's no way it's this little. Once Jackson started working part-time in high school, he began buying his own things. It's embarrassing as a parent, but it gave us a little more breathing room in our budget. I thought we could even start saving a small amount, but Mason stopped contributing financially, plunging us back into hardship. It soon became clear what Mason was spending his money on. What's this? It's fine. Got it cheap from someone I know. A motorcycle? That's cool. Where did we have the room in our budget for this? I was speechless. Later, Jackson graduated from high school, worked for a while, and moved out at 22. However, he lived nearby and always came home on weekends. Dad, where are we going today? There's a famous pizza place in the mountains. Let's go there. Mason completely stopped doing housework. He and Jackson, having been inseparable since Jackson was young, were like friends. Now, influenced by Mason, Jackson rides motorcycles too, and they often leave me behind on weekends to go on rides. Well, I find it easier when they're not around, so it's fine by me. Dad, why did you marry Mom, who's so uninteresting? Why indeed? I totally chose the wrong person to marry, lol. I've become numb to overhearing such conversations. Jackson, at 26, got married. His wife, Lily, unlike Jackson, isn't the type to ride motorcycles around. She's more serious and hardworking, a bit like me. I've heard men are often attracted to women who resemble their mothers. Maybe Jackson subconsciously chose someone like me. Dad, where are we going today? There's a new fast food place. Want to check it out? Even after getting married, Jackson continued to go out with Mason on weekends. I wonder if it's okay to leave his new wife, Lily, like that. Maybe Lily tolerates it because, unlike Mason, Jackson does work properly. Don't you ever get complaints for not taking Mom along? Nope, never lol. Even if she did, I'd ignore her because she's a buzzkill lol.
Do they not realize their conversation can be heard inside the house? Their usual banter continues. I've become so numb to it, I hardly react anymore. I usually don't pay much attention to Mason and Jackson, but one day something happened that I couldn't overlook. One weekend morning, I woke up to Mason preparing to go out early. Assuming it was just another outing with Jackson, I went back to sleep. When I woke up again and checked outside, the motorcycle was gone. They must have left early as usual. I was spending my day at home when Mason called in the afternoon.
I'm in Charleston. What souvenir would you like? What? Charleston? Can you make it back today? We're staying in Charleston today, touring Savannah in Georgia tomorrow, and planning to return the night after tomorrow.
Mason and Jackson often ride out on the motorcycle, but they always return the same day. Staying overnight is new.
Is Jackson with you? What about work on Monday?
Jackson and Lily are off today and tomorrow, and they took the day after off.
Wait, Lily's there too?
Yeah, so it's a family trip. So, I'm counting on you to house sit, lol. It's not unusual for Mason and Jackson to leave me behind. But I was astounded they took Lily. Did she willingly go on this trip? While I was wrestling with these worries, Mason dropped a bombshell. Also, you're covering the trip expenses, lol.
What do you mean?
I borrowed a credit card from your wallet, lol.
You did what?
To think, a thief in the family. It's so disheartening. I've been somewhat indifferent towards Mason because he was spending his own salary. But using my credit card, our household money, is unforgivable. Does he have any idea how hard I worked to keep us afloat? I hurried to check my wallet. Then, my anger vanished, replaced by laughter.
The card you took wasn't the black one, but the silver one, right? Yes. Do you have any cash with you? You don't have your own credit card, do you? I have about $200 or so. Why? That's not enough for a 3-day trip. You'll have to ask Jackson to cover the rest. Emma, what are you talking about? Well, about that credit card, lol, it seems to be damaged, lol.
When I had to tell Mason, who was out having a good time without me, about the truth, I almost laughed, my voice shook, and my words even came out funny.
What? What's wrong with this credit card? It's not broken.
This credit card, it seems to have a magnetic malfunction or something. It can't be read, lol.
Why do you even have such a credit card?
Didn't my wallet have 2 credit cards? I manage my money by separating fixed and variable expenses. The one you took is for fixed expenses like utilities and subscription services. I realized it was damaged when I tried to use it by mistake, but since it's not used for reading at supermarkets or restaurants, I didn't bother reissuing it.
What? So, this credit card is useless?
That's right.
Wait. I told Jackson and Lily that I'd pay for the hotel and meals with this card. How can I tell them it's actually unusable? It's embarrassing.
Mason intended to show off with someone else's money. It's another pathetic tale. I don't know. Maybe you can figure something out with your $200? Don't forget the souvenirs. Mason was still fussing on the other end, but I ignored him and hung up. I was alone until Mason returned from the trip. I decided to fully enjoy my time without Mason. 2 days later, in the evening, Mason returned home a bit earlier than planned.
Emma, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea how terrible our situation was?
Yeah, make sure you pay back the money for the trip. It seemed Jackson and Lily were with him. Mason and Jackson started venting their unreasonable anger towards me from the entrance, even though they hadn't seen me yet. My peaceful time alone was over. I slowly made my way to the entrance.
Stop making a scene at the entrance, come inside first.
I ushered Mason, Jackson, and Lily into the house and arranged us around the table, with Mason and Jackson facing me and Lily. Mason and Jackson were frowning and crossing their arms, looking angry. Lily also looked displeased.
Keeping a damaged credit card, even though you're always on my case about things. Even you can't manage your own stuff, Emma. Make sure you pay back the money I fronted for the trip. We went because you said you'd pay for the expenses.
I was exasperated by Mason's irrelevant arguments and Jackson's fixation on money. There were too many things to address. I didn't even know where to start. Mason and Jackson continued to complain at me. As I was trying to decide what to say, Lily suddenly burst out angrily.
Jackson! Enough already. It's embarrassing. Why are you getting mad?
Lily's sudden outburst left Mason and Jackson confused. However, since Lily and I probably have similar personalities, I had an inkling of what was going on. I was certain of it when Lily got furious.
Don't you two get why Lily is angry? What? You understand, Emma? Lily doesn't like motorcycles like Mason and Jackson. Being dragged around on the back of a motorcycle for hours must have been hard for her. Plus, it's not enjoyable to have your FIL tag along on what's supposed to be a couple's trip, not to mention being forced to take off work and ending up with a stolen credit card that doesn't work. That must have been tough for Lily. Am I right? Yes, that's pretty much it. Lily, what are you talking about? You always complain about wanting to go places, so I took you. Lily didn't want that. You just forced her to join your hobby. She just agreed with what I said. To add to what I said earlier, I thought she was also part of this trip. She was left behind, right? I can't forgive that either.
Lily glared at Mason and Jackson, who awkwardly looked away. It seems Lily's sullenness wasn't about my credit card being unusable, but rather directed at Mason and Jackson's selfishness.
Jackson, I've decided. I want a divorce, and since both your parents are here, I'm saying it now.
What? Why all of a sudden?
It's not sudden. It's okay for you to go out with Mason, but you always spend a lot and don't do anything at home. I just wanted a bit of our time, a little consideration for our relationship. You don't understand that at all, and I don't see a future in this.
Dad does the same, and he's not divorced from Mom.
Jackson, you're following the wrong example.
Apparently, Jackson was too influenced by Mason and became just like him. Lily's grievances with Jackson were the same as mine with Mason. The difference between me and Lily is that she decided to leave Jackson within a year. Lily's declaration of divorce gave me courage.
I support Lily's decision to divorce. Accept it, Jackson. Emma, what are you thinking? Not supporting your own son and agreeing to a divorce?
Also, I want a divorce too.
What?
My sudden declaration of divorce surprised all three of them. The word divorce, which I had never even considered, came out impulsively, and I was shocked by my own statement. The behavior of Mason and Jackson must have unconsciously pushed me to my limits.
That's how it is, so you two go back to Jackson's house. Lily, stay here for now.
With unstoppable momentum, I sent Mason and Jackson out of the house.
Lily, shall we proceed with the divorce proceedings together? Feel free to use this house until the divorce is finalized. Thank you.
Lily was confused by the unexpected turn of events. However, having a common adversary, we quickly bonded and started working together towards the divorce. Afterward, Jackson and Lily quickly finalized their divorce, and although it took longer for me and Mason, we eventually managed to divorce as well. Once Jackson and Lily's divorce was settled, Lily moved out of the house. Though we lived together for only a month, it was surprisingly enjoyable, and we still keep in touch. When my divorce was finalized, Mason and Jackson started living together, and I left the house. Mason began job hunting to support himself, but having worked only part-time for nearly 30 years, finding a full-time job at almost 60 seemed unlikely. He's still working part-time. Jackson continues his job, but at 27, his income isn't substantial. As a result, Mason and Jackson appear to be living a deficit life, planning to move into a small, cheap apartment together. This situation will likely make Mason realize how hard I had to work to manage our life, and Jackson will understand the challenges of living with Mason. I started living alone after leaving the house. Now, I can spend my earnings solely on myself. Today, I bought a cake on my way home from work. Such luxury was unimaginable in my previous life, but now I am enjoying my days. So if you've taken painkillers, you shouldn't be in pain anymore. Vacuum the floor. He stared on the painkiller package I had just taken.
I will. Please wait a little for the medicine to work.
When I told him that, he sighed loudly and stood up.
It's not like I was asking him to do the chores, he could have waited a bit.
I was holding back my sigh, then a sharp pain shot through my back. As I fell to the floor, I saw my husband, Stephen, sitting indecently with one leg on the back of the sofa.
I shocked and wondered, did he just kick me, as he laughed coldly. It's enough with the period pain excuses, just vacuum the floor now.
My name is Mary, I'm 27 years old. I'm a typical housewife living with my husband, Stephen. I met Stephen when I joined the company where he worked. After graduating from college, I took a job in sales. Stephen was my mentor there. He was handsome with short hair, and his good looks and conversation skills attracted customers. In a sales job, successful individuals are those who possess extensive knowledge and information about the products they are selling, and can utilize these insights in their sales approach. Alternatively, it's said there's another type of successful salesperson is who can make the customer feeling to sign a contract. Stephen was definitely the latter. Initially, I only had respect for him as a successful salesman.
But when I was struggling to make deals, Stephen reached out to me.
Gradually, I began confiding in him. While we were going out and having meals together, and developed my feelings for him. Therefore, I was overjoyed when we started dating and ecstatic when he proposed.
Our married life was filled with happiness.
But there was one thing that always troubled me.
The fact that I have suffered from severe menstrual pain since my school days.
Initially, I used mild over-the-counter painkillers, but as my body got used to them, I needed stronger medication to get through my daily life. When we were dating, Stephen would adjust his plans according to my cycle and would comfort me when I complained about the pain. I thought this care would continue after marriage.
But I was wrong.
Every month, the same menstrual pain occurred. Seeing me struggle to do housework without medication, Stephen would just sigh.
This didn't just start in the last few years, get used to it.
He started saying that to me. We both work, but Stephen earns more and contributes a larger amount to our living expenses. My earnings wouldn't be enough for living both of us, so I put extra effort into housework. During my period, I would finish as much housework as I could while the painkillers were effective, then rest a bit on the sofa before resuming.
I was doing everything in order, but to Stephen, it seemed like I was just lying down and resting. No matter how much I did, he never offered a word of comfort.
Then one day, we bought a new house. We had been living in an apartment, but we purchased a larger home in case we had children. Stephen's parents love socializing and often host parties with relatives. Stephen thought it was a perfect opportunity to show off our new house, and decided to invite the relatives for a party at our place.
Once he made up his mind, Stephen was quick to act. He set the date for the party and handed me a list of relatives who would be attending. The list included not only names but also ages and food preferences.
To my surprise, Stephen,
"Make sure to prepare dishes that cater to everyone's preferences. I won't forgive any shortcuts like buying ready-made appetizers," he said in an annoyed tone.
It was challenging to plan the menu as everyone had different likes and dislikes, and some favorite foods of one person were disliked by another. After days of sleepless nights for planning the menu, my period started behind than I expected. I took painkillers, finished cleaning the rooms, and decorated them with flowers the day before. I placed air fresheners and repeatedly went over the next day's party steps in my mind.
Then that night, after preparing the menu, finally I went to bed. While I was preparing with the help of painkillers, Stephen had daily evening drinking and laughing loudly at the TV.
I remembered Stephen like that as I fell asleep in bed. The next morning, I got up before Stephen to make breakfast and started cooking for the party while tidying up. I was checking the time constantly and kept moving. I arranged the finished dishes on the table and carefully checked every area, from the entrance to the living room and the bathroom. But it seemed the effect of the painkillers was wearing off, as I could no longer to bear the gradually intensifying pain, so sat down on the sofa. I wanted to lie down, but since I had managed to do my hair and makeup nicely, and didn't know when the relatives would arrive, I decided to just sit. As I turned my gaze towards Stephen, he was watching TV, a glass of alcohol in hand. Despite the fact that relatives were about to arrive, I wanted to say don't start drinking now to Stephen, but the words wouldn't come out. Noticing my gaze, Stephen glared at me.
What, you're giving me that don't drink at this time look?
It's not that.
I'm getting nervous too. And you're just lounging on the sofa. You finished the preparations, right?
Stephen put his glass on the table and walked towards me.
I felt a strange tension in his stare, a bad feeling growing inside me.
Everything is in order. But my period started and the painkiller's effect is wearing off, so I'm taking a short break. I'll get moving soon. Stephen sighed and glared at me.
Don't coddle yourself over a mere stomachache. My mom never did that.
Right after those words, just as I thought Stephen had come up behind me, I was suddenly kicked in my back and fell off the sofa to the floor. By the time I realized that I had been kicked by someone, I was already on the floor, and it took me a while to grasp what had happened. Meanwhile, Stephen sat down on the sofa nonchalantly. And, unbelievably, he started playing games on his mobile phone. I couldn't understand what was happening or the situation I was in.
All I knew was that Stephen, without a single word of apology, was laughing and enjoying his game.
When I tried to stand up, suddenly Stephen fell to the floor. Looking up to see why he fell, I saw Stephen's dad, Paul. He was standing behind the sofa. Paul looked furious, and I couldn't take my eyes off him.
What's going on?
Stephen couldn't be understanding the situation and checked the sofa in panic.
Oh, Paul? Did you just push me?
While Stephen was picking up his phone from the floor, and he asked Paul. I didn't push you, I shoved you, Stephen.
What? Why would Paul shove me? You fools, what do you mean for kicking someone in the back? And that someone is your wife, Stephen.
Stephen seemed a bit taken aback by Paul's anger. I was just a bit bold because I was drinking. Stephen tried to respond, but Paul glared at him, his excuse not mitigating the situation. Don't blame it on the alcohol. Whatever the reason, a man should never resort to violence against a woman. What do you mean by reason? This is like discipline. Discipline? Yes, she was resting on the sofa even though the preparations weren't finished. So I was teaching her that if you don't work, you don't have a rest. It's part of discipline. Right, Mary? Suddenly asked by Stephen, I didn't know how to respond. I had properly finished the preparations and sat on the sofa just to rest a bit. Should I tell the truth because I did everything correctly? As I hesitated, Paul also turned his gaze towards me. Mary, is what Stephen's saying true? I couldn't find the words to reply. If I told the truth, Stephen might get scolded by Paul and spoil his mood, especially with relatives about to arrive. I didn't want to cause any trouble for the relatives who were coming to see our new house. I was about to agree with Stephen. Mary, your silence is an answer, isn't it? Eh? Confused by Paul's words, then I asked back. If what Stephen said was true, Mary would have immediately agreed. But Mary is silent. That suggests that something, or everything is not true what Stephen said. I felt as if Paul had seen through everything. I opened my mouth to tell the truth. The preparations are already done. It's just that I am feeling a bit unwell today.
What? It's just your period.
Stephen interrupted my words. Unable to say it directly in front of Paul, I tried to phrase it differently, but Stephen's lack of tact brought my tears from my eyes. Saying you're unwell over a mere period. If the preparations are done, then say so. I thought Mary was just lazily sitting on the sofa again, not finishing the preparations. Stephen's words were final. He didn't remember what I said earlier about almost finishing the preparations. He hadn't seen that I had been preparing since early morning, or rather, since yesterday, doing all the work myself without his help. He wasn't aware that I had taken painkillers to manage. He had decided to host the party here on his own and didn't help with any other preparations or cooking. A sense of injustice began to grow inside me. Listen to this. She's been complaining about severe menstrual pain since before we got married, but she still can't get used to the pain. Every month it's like this. My mom was never like this, right, Paul? It seems I was right to come early to help Mary since you said you would entertain us as the inconsiderate host. What? I'm inconsiderate? Not Mary? Yes, it's you! You insisted on having the party here, but didn't cooperate with Mary in preparations. Had you worked together, you would have understood how hard she worked and how much she was suffering. Instead, you started drinking before guests arrived. The one who was lounging around was you, Stephen. Stephen was clearly frightened by Paul's yelling. I didn't want Stephen to end up regretting like I do. I tried to educate you with that feeling. Paul pulled a chair from the dining table, sat down, and sighed heavily. Patricia was like Mary, suffered from severe menstrual pain. Being a man, I had no knowledge about menstruation, and it wasn't an information-rich era like now. Plus, her mother used to say she was weak for not managing her condition, so I thought menstrual pain was just a lack of self-management. Paul spoke slowly, seemingly recalling the past. Back then, painkillers were weak. Patricia, a housewife living with in-laws, was forced to do all the chores, even during severe menstrual pain. Then, Patricia collapsed. We rushed her to the hospital, and she was diagnosed with endometriosis, which shattered her dream of giving Stephen siblings. Eh? Stephen asked Paul in a small voice. It varies by individual, and not everyone ends up like that. But excessive endurance of menstrual pain can lead to illness, and Patricia did become ill. She faced stress from housework, childcare, inconsiderate to parents' in-laws, and an unsupportive husband, eventually leading to infertility. I blamed the era, and also her mother, but it was all wrong. I should have understood for her. We can't experience their pain, so I should have listened and accepted her reality. But I didn't, and it was my fault, blindly agreeing with her mother. I regret not knowing and still do. Patricia supported Paul's shoulder as he spoke in a somber tone. I could only eye contact to Patricia in acknowledgement, who wore a sad smile as she said, "Sorry for intruding." Paul tried hard to understand. Despite his busy work, he often helped with chores and even cut ties with his own parents. Patricia looked at Paul lovingly. It was the least I could do. I didn't want to burden Patricia anymore. I wanted us three to live happily, so I did what I had to. But cutting ties with parents is a big decision. I didn't want you to have to make such decisions, so I tried to show you my mistakes. But it seems none of it got through to you. Unable to bear the tense atmosphere, Stephen spoke in an inappropriately cheerful voice. Paul, you're exaggerating. In my memory, Mom was sick in bed, but I don't remember her being bedridden due to her period. Maybe you're just remembering it as worse than it was? Patricia's hand on Paul's shoulder trembled slightly. Gently stroking her hand, Paul glared at Stephen. You just forgot. Patricia didn't want to worry you and tried to hide it as much as possible. If pain were just a matter of willpower, it wouldn't lead to illness. But virtually, Patricia did suffer from menstrual pain and had to lie in bed. I remember you coming home from school and complaining about her always sleeping. I even talked to you about it, explaining it wasn't laziness but a health issue. You didn't care, did you? Not only did you ignore Mary, but you also never saw Patricia's struggles. Paul's words weighed heavily on Stephen, his shoulders visibly drooping. I didn't know what to say or if it was even my place to speak in such an atmosphere. Then, the doorbell rang. It was 5 minutes before the appointed time, and I hurried to answer the door, cradling my aching stomach. On the screen, relatives were visible. I quickly responded and rushed to the entrance. Opening the door, the relatives greeted us with a bouquet arranged for our new housewarming. I thanked them and led them into the living room with due respect. As the relatives entered the living room, the atmosphere was still tense between the parents-in-law and Stephen, causing the relatives to exchange glances. "What happened, Paul?" one of the relatives asked Paul. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Stephen's new house. Sorry for the bad atmosphere, we were just arguing." "Does arguing usually mess up the sofa and cushions like this?" He misunderstood Mary resting on the sofa due to poor health as laziness and pushed her off. I was scolding him for that. Hearing Paul's words, the relatives' expressions turned to disbelief, and a younger-looking woman came over to me. "Are you okay? You must be tired from all the preparations." I shook my head in response. "No, just severe menstrual pain." "Just? What did you say?" "There's menstrual leave at work, you know. I've used it too. Everyone's pain varies, but when it's really bad, you can apply for it at work. Why can't you rest at home?" She said this and turned to Stephen with momentum. "What?" Stephen, taken aback, was met with cold stares from the parents-in-law and the relatives. Unable to bear the scrutiny, Stephen rushed into his room. Despite Stephen's absence, no one followed him. It seemed the relatives knew about Patricia's condition, and even the men showed understanding. The parents-in-law immediately came to me, apologizing for their son's behavior, while the relatives admired the new house and praised my cooking. No one blamed me. They were impressed with the food and showered me with compliments. I began to enjoy myself as the painkillers started to work. After a while, I received an email from Stephen. It said that because of me, he couldn't enjoy the gathering at all. He wrote about being scolded by Paul and having no allies among the relatives, wondering why it all had to be him. I was annoyed he chose to email rather than call. As I contemplated how to respond, Patricia glanced at my phone. Seeing the message, and she stood up. Paul was seeing that, then asked, "What's going on?" Patricia snatched the mobile phone from me and handed it to Paul. When Paul looked at the phone, he also stood up, just like Patricia had. "He still hasn't understood anything. It seems I need to take him home and re-educate him from the basics." Although unexpected, Paul and Patricia said this, looking at each other. Later, the relatives also agreed with the idea of re-educating Stephen, and they seemed fully committed to it. After a while, sensing the atmosphere, the relatives tactfully left, and Patricia went to Stephen's room and dragging him out. Both Paul and Patricia took Stephen by the arm, and he was led away without a chance to protest. About a week later, Stephen was taken back to his parents' house. I received an email from him. According to it, he mentioned that Patricia was making him extensively study about the female body and the difficulties of menstrual pain. He was being made to do household chores under Paul's supervision, assuming Patricia was in pain. The email sounded like complaints about balancing work and housework. I laughed when reading it, thinking about how Paul and Patricia had said they would re-educate him from the basics, and it was really happening. I wondered if Stephen now understood a bit of my feelings, which made me smile. During this time, I took the opportunity to focus on my menstrual health. Following the relatives' advice that severe menstrual pain should be checked by a gynecologist, I visited the hospital while Stephen was away. Because of the advice on medication, daily routines, and precautions was helpful. Life without Stephen's comments was surprisingly comfortable. I could live at my own pace and lie on the sofa when I felt tired. It felt like a life where I could take care of myself. I somewhat hoped for more time like this. Partly due to Patricia's intervention, I enjoyed this slow-paced life and didn't reply to Stephen's emails. Few weeks later, when Stephen returned with his parents, the parents-in-law, who came straight to the dining table, made Stephen sit in a chair in front of them and pulled out a green paper from an envelope. It turned out to be a divorce application. I thought, could this really be a divorce right here and now? but Stephen was filling in the necessary information with a pen. Stephen began filling it out, and when he finished, Paul spoke solemnly. "Mary, if Stephen ever behaves badly towards you again, feel free to submit this signed divorce application." Paul's eyes were serious, and Stephen's too. During our separation, Stephen was apparently re-educated by his parents-in-law and promised to change his behavior. Since then, Stephen has kept his promise, not showing arrogance and even willingly doing housework, especially during my period. Gradually, he stopped making derogatory comments about menstruation. Our life has become more peaceful, and I am relieved. From now on, I plan to live without overexerting myself, paying attention to my health, and taking care of myself.
My name is Christine. I'm a 60-year-old woman. Though I have a peaceful home now, I've been through some really tough times. That was about 30 years ago. Back then, I was 30 and my husband Gabe was 34. We had been married for 5 years. We had a 1-year-old daughter. We were living with my mother-in-law, Carrie. She was 62 and bedridden. I was the one taking care of her, and I was fine with that. My father-in-law had already passed away, and Carrie's house was gone. He had debts, so we sold my in-laws' property to pay them off. Most of the leftover money also went to us because we were caring for Carrie. Caring for her was tough, but we had reasons for doing so, and I had found ways to manage, so it wasn't a problem for me. However, the issue was with my sister-in-law's family. My sister-in-law, Riza, is 37 and divorced with 2 kids, ages 5 and 2. They moved in with us 2 years ago. When she first got divorced, I told her, "You can stay here for a year until you get on your feet." But 2 years have passed and there is no sign of them leaving. It seems that, because Carrie lives with us, they think of our house as their parental home. At first, they were somewhat humble, but lately they act like they have a right to live here too. Riza had a pretty good reason for her divorce, even from my point of view. Her ex-husband had debt issues. At one point, he took money from someone and basically offered Riza as collateral. Because of this, they got divorced. So, I understand she needs time to heal and become independent, which is why I said it was okay for her to stay. Riza also seems anxious about living alone with her kids. Once, when Carrie was in the hospital for tests, Gabe stayed overnight with Riza. But it happened that we had a family emergency out of town, and when Gabe said, "I'm going to the wake and funeral and will be back in a day," Riza broke down and clung to him, saying, "Don't leave me alone, I'm scared." So, he changed his plans and stayed in a hotel with her for the night. While it doesn't seem like Riza had any intention of becoming independent, her attitude of acting like she's in her own home annoys me. Gabe feels the same. Even though we still have a mortgage, the house we built together isn't sitting right with him anymore. That said, Gabe has mixed feelings, as he also feels sympathy for Riza. We haven't taken any living expenses from Riza for a year, accepting her as a long-term guest with that understanding. However, after the 1-year mark, I spoke up and Gabe aired his grievances. Now, she contributes $300 a month. But to be honest, $300 isn't enough to support all 3 of us, and it's not just about money. I don't like the fact that they're living in our home. Carrie, who doesn't speak much due to the after effects of her illness, told me a year ago, "I'm worried about Riza too, but I'm sorry for being such a burden. Please help her become independent to some extent. I want her to be independent too, but I'm not her parent, and it's challenging if she doesn't want to. I also have to handle daily chores and child-rearing tasks for Riza and her kids. On top of my own family's responsibilities and taking care of Carrie, it's nothing but stress for me. Even though I've been quite vocal and sometimes blunt, it seems like my words just pass right by her, as if I'm just complaining like a mom would. For instance, the other day she put her laundry in our hamper. I told her explicitly, "Follow the rules. The money you're putting in isn't enough and you've overstayed your welcome. Please leave." Her response was to casually say, "Well, this is like my parents' house," and walk away. We even have 2 separate hampers to sort the laundry between our family and hers, and yet this still happened. If she's scared to live on her own and still wants to stay with us, then I wish she'd show more consideration and share the responsibilities. But that doesn't mean she can just stay here forever. Honestly, I think Gabe might be spoiling her too much past the point where it's acceptable. I'm planning to have a serious talk with him. We've had countless discussions, but this time I'm prepared to discuss the worst case scenario, including divorce, to make my point clear. If I keep going like this, I might just get sick. I want to spend more time with my child, have some one-to-one moments, you know. One of the stressors making me want Riza and her family to leave is how her eldest son treats my daughter as a nuisance. Despite my multiple clear statements about this, Riza just doesn't seem to get it, and it's annoying. I've thought about taking my kids and leaving, but I always end up worrying about Carrie and dropping the idea. Even if I left Carrie behind, I doubt Riza would do anything for her. She often says things like, "I can't believe you can even handle diaper changes. I could never do that." I'm also concerned because her cooking is iffy. But I can easily see this having a negative impact on my daughter over time, so I think it's time to toughen up and think of alternatives. It might sound mean, but I've started to notice a difference in the quality of meals between Riza's family and ours, and I'm considering cutting back on what I cook for them. Some have said it's too little, but they're only contributing to the rent, so I've announced that I'll reduce it gradually. Riza apparently complained to Gabe, but it seems he just said it's only fair. Unfortunately, that's where the conversation ended. Later, Gabe, Carrie and I had a discussion. I said, "I can't sustain myself like this. Stress is piling up and I can't properly attend to my daughter. I even find myself getting angry over trivial things, which I regret. My daughter isn't comfortable in her own home because she's treated as a nuisance by Riza's children. If Riza's family doesn't move out within 2 months, I'm prepared to rent an apartment and live with my daughter. Divorce is also on the table." Gabe admitted he knew I was stressed, but didn't know how to ask Riza to leave. When he consulted friends, suggesting, "Throw all of Riza's stuff out and change the locks," he got responses like, "Won't that involve the police?" So he was mulling it over. That day, Carrie told me, "I want you to call Riza to the room when she gets back." I didn't know what she was planning to say, but I assumed she would ask Riza to leave. I can't be sure, but it feels like things are starting to move now that I've shown some resolve. I want to stay focused and not let my emotions get the best of me. For dinner tonight, I plan to cook, but will let everyone know I won't be cooking starting tomorrow. After Riza got home, Carrie, Gabe and I told her about our discussion, being quite firm in our stance and words. As a result, we finally got her to say, "I'll start looking for a place tomorrow." However, before she agreed to that, we heard all kinds of complaints like, "If I contribute $500 for rent, that should be enough, right?" In response, Gabe said the following to Riza: "It's not nearly enough. We've said this multiple times. If you want to stay here, you should pay what we're asking." He added, "In reality, you should be bowing your head and thanking my wife, who you are inconveniencing. This isn't your home, this is my home, with my wife and my kids. Don't get that twisted. If you don't leave within a month, we're considering legal action. We won't know or care where you go. You've been told to be out in a month." We also had her put it in writing. Finally, Riza and her crew left, and I felt genuinely relieved. Life became peaceful once Riza left, and I could better focus on caregiving and raising our child. However, the story didn't end there. A few days after Riza left, we were notified that she collapsed and fell unconscious while on her way from her apartment to work. The cause is unknown. She woke up by evening, and while physically okay, it seemed there might be some mental issues at play. It was a massive shock, considering things were finally starting to look up for her. Gabe and Carrie are discussing what to do next. I can't help but worry about the choices Carrie and Gabe will make moving forward. If I ever have to take in my sister-in-law again and we live together for a while, and it just doesn't work out, I find myself thinking about various options. Should my kids and I separate from my spouse, or would it be better to just get a divorce? Carrie and Gabe later proposed that Riza stay with us until winter. They've inquired about family shelters, but were told immediate admission is unlikely. The earliest entry could be 2 months from now, or as late as 5 months. Even though Riza has a medical diagnosis, the counseling and overall assessment indicate that her anxiety could improve if she had someone to rely on at night. This makes Riza's case for shelter admission a low priority, especially when we offer the alternative of living together. It seems the authorities think that as a family we should pull together. It's really not that simple for us. As for me, I worry that Riza will get comfortable and decide to stay for good, even if temporarily. The fact that she collapsed is also a concern. Gabe and Carrie insist that they will definitely make her leave this time, and that she won't return because a shelter is a safer option. However, I've heard Riza complain about the lack of private bathrooms and shared laundry facilities at the shelter, so I worry she'll find excuses to stay. To Carrie and Gabe, I may look like a wicked wife kicking out a family member, but I don't want Riza to feel so at home here that she doesn't want to leave. I intend to continue saying that I don't want to live with her, but I'm at a loss for what to do. As it stands, the plan Carrie and Gabe presented to Riza is that she'll handle post-meal cleanup, general cleaning, assisting Carrie with bathroom needs, and caring for her child. She'll also contribute $800 for rent and food. Still, I'm unhappy and stressed by this arrangement, especially knowing it puts a burden on my daughter. Frankly, I don't even want to entertain the idea of living with Riza, even temporarily. I hate to say this, but I think it's a good opportunity to make them realize they can't manage without me. I don't believe Riza is capable of fulfilling these responsibilities, especially the caregiving tasks. This arrangement seems doomed to fail from the start. If Riza was going to keep living with us, it became clear to me that Gabe and Carrie had no intention of dealing with her. It seemed like a good time to consider divorce. I tried to talk some sense into Gabe, but he wouldn't listen. He promised to kick her out when she had to move into a mother-child home, but I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my things, left a note, and moved out. Now, My daughter and I are living in a budget-friendly apartment. It's only been a few days since Riza arrived, but she seems to be causing problems already. She keeps contacting me, saying that life is meaningless without me there. I finally told her, "You brought this on yourself by not being independent. If we divorce, it's your fault. Let Carrie take care of you." I cried, but I don't care anymore. Gabe and Carrie have also been begging me to come back, but as long as Riza is there, I'm 100% not going back. In fact, I told them, if you don't kick out Riza, I'll file for divorce and demand alimony in court. 2 weeks have passed since then, and I've heard from Gabe. As expected, Riza hasn't been helping with household chores or caregiving, especially when it comes to sanitary issues. Gabe has been juggling work and home responsibilities. It's become unmanageable. He even took some time off to figure things out. He was so frustrated, he rented an apartment just for Riza and moved her in. That's why he's begging for me to come back. He thought about hiring a helper, but it seems not to be an immediate option. Besides, it would be financially difficult to keep a helper long term. Putting Carrie in a facility is also not a quick fix and would strain our budget. Gabe is at his wit's end. However, I'm hesitant to go back so soon because Riza could come back and create problems again. She has a track record of coming back within a week. Right now, it's only been 4 days since Riza got kicked out. Gabe's job doesn't handle sudden absences well, so his position could be jeopardized if this continues. I'm conflicted about going back. Could I be the only one who saw things coming? If they could kick Riza out, they should have done it from the get-go. Things would have remained the same, caregiving for Carrie and managing the household chores. Actually, without Riza and her family, we could have managed even better. Although paying for Riza's apartment is a burden, we are now effectively paying for 2 apartments. We could have saved money if we had acted sooner. After 2 years of history, I never imagined things would go south. But when they did, they quickly kicked Riza out and called me back in. Would they have never called me back if things were going well? It's as if I'm only good for housework and caregiving. I can't help but think that way. Even though Riza left and things mostly went my way, I was still uneasy. Was it my role in their lives or their sheer foolishness? I'm not sure. After a lot of thinking, I decided to move back home. People might think it's a reckless decision. I thought so too, many times over. But if we keep going like this, Gabe won't last. We'll go bankrupt and our family will fall apart. So, in another sense, there's nothing left to lose. I don't want to hastily choose divorce either. So, I thought this is really the last chance and decided to return home. Gabe was thrilled, and he apologized to me. He said he wants to live with me and the kids after all. Even hearing that, my worries weren't gone. I realized we can never go back to how we were. Somehow, Riza found out and barged in again. Gabe, Carrie and Riza are talking. I figured it's best if I don't participate, so I'm left out. Overhearing their conversation, Gabe was earnestly stating that he is the owner of the house. Also, it seems Riza might think of this place as a kind of home because Carrie is here. In that regard, Carrie is more of a freeloader than a housemate. Therefore, Riza can't be a part of this household, he kept explaining. But there's no way Riza would back down from that. As expected, Riza started saying, "What if I collapse again? What happens to the kids? Can you take responsibility if something happens? Even the doctors say it's better if only the children and I live together. Gabe and Carrie fell silent. Then Gabe said, "All right, until we find a place in a mother-child home." Just as Gabe said that, I stormed into the room they were in. I asked Gabe if he's really taking Riza back. Gabe was at a loss for words. I turned my eyes to Riza. Riza had a smug look on her face. She probably thought she could easily manipulate Gabe and others with her words. I couldn't hold back any longer and said, "You ever think about the future? You have 2 kids, right? Planning to send them to high school, college? Can you even afford that? We've got kids too. They grow up, you know. Think we can all still fit in this house then? Think your kids will accept this lifestyle when they're teenagers? I doubt it. Both physically and emotionally. You're 37 and don't even have any qualifications. You're running out of time to get a decent job. Your eldest is what, 5 years old now? He'll be a teenager in roughly 10 years. You'll be 47. What's he going to think about his mom who can't even hold a decent job, can't do housework, and relies on family just to survive? And how will he feel when he sees he's had fewer opportunities in life because of you? Our daughter will get a proper education, and he'll see that gap right under the same roof. You were talking about responsibilities earlier, but I think that's my line. Do you even feel responsible for your children's lives? I feel sorry for them, born to a mother like you, who can only rely on others. Do you have any dignity? Doesn't it make you miserable? Don't you get tired of being despised and looked down upon? Don't you ever wonder what you are living for? Or are you just existing purely on instinct, like some weed growing by the side of the road? Even your ex-husband deserves pity. I used to think it was your fault for marrying such a loser, but maybe he became that way because of you. You know, they say some women can really ruin a man. Are you the epitome of that?" Riza was trembling and shouted, "What are you even saying? Do you know what he did to me? Even if he hurt you, it probably didn't clear his conscience. I can totally understand how your ex-husband must have felt. If he had custody of the kids, it might have been better for them compared to being with you." "What do you know? You don't know anything about him or me." "Why state the obvious? I've never met your ex-husband, and I certainly don't want to understand someone like you, who can't even understand her own kids' feelings. Don't bother talking, your voice is irritating enough. You're so annoying, you're the worst." "If I'm the worst, then what does it make you, depending on such a woman to get by? Just go, you've got nothing meaningful to say anyway. Maybe you've just run out of words. Stop messing around, why should I do what you say? Even after all this, you still want me to take care of you? You really have no pride, huh? Why don't you go ahead and beg then? Should be easy for you." Riza was now screaming nonsense, glaring at me all the while. But eventually, she closed her mouth, trembling, fell to her knees and begged. "Is this what you wanted? Don't tell me to leave anymore." I stepped on Riza's head as she begged. "What are you talking about? I never said I'd take care of you if you begged. Don't get it twisted. You really are stupid. Remember how you told Gabe some nonsense earlier? Something about what you if collapse or something happens to your child. Gabe may be soft on you, but do you want me to tell you off instead?" Both Riza and Gabe shuddered. I couldn't care less, really, whether you collapse somewhere or your kid ends up lost. To me, it's like saying the loud cicada from yesterday died today. If I had to say, it's a relief. Get lost. This is the second time. There won't be a third. Riza screamed something, and bolted out of the house. I haven't seen her in 30 years since that day. I know nothing about her life thereafter. Whether she ended up in a shelter or if she's even alive, driving her out was the right thing to do. I could finally focus on my own family. Ever since that day, I feel like Gabe and Carrie have been a little distant. But I draw Riza out of them, so I'm not the bad guy, right?
My name is Ellen. I've been married to my husband, Mark, for almost 2 years now. We started living with Mark's mother, Linda, about a year after our wedding. Linda? Well, she's your typical mother-in-law, and seems she doesn't quite like me. Ellen, look at this dirty window. What's with this dish, Ellen? This bland food isn't edible. Don't tell me tonight's side dish is just some deli food from the supermarket. Modern daughters-in-law can't even cook. That's the kind of snide remarks I get every day. Luckily, Mark is on my side, and even speaks up to Linda for me. When her own son talks back, Linda doesn't have much to say, and she tones down the sarcasm in Mark's presence. But when Mark's away, she seizes the moment to nitpick, so it doesn't really help much. I tried to get along with Linda, but it just didn't work out. Well, these mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues are common in many families, so I've kind of given up on it halfway. Apart from pestering me, Linda has a hobby. It's gardening. She's been gardening for years, and though she can't grow as many varieties of vegetables as she used to due to her age, she still grows potatoes. That in itself isn't an issue, but she always says things like, "I'm not giving these vegetables to you." That's what she says. Not that I ever said I wanted them. If I were to say that, she'd surely start on something else. So, I don't talk back. After all, I can just buy potatoes at the supermarket. There's no way I'd go out of my way to want vegetables grown by Linda. I wouldn't want to owe her anything. Just remember, don't you dare take these potatoes. I grew them with care. Yeah, I get it. Yet, maybe because she's so afraid of them being taken, Linda hauls the harvested potatoes to her room for storage. I really can't understand her logic. I mentioned it to Mark once, but he just said, "Let her do what she wants." He doesn't seem to care much. And honestly, it doesn't bother me if Linda stores her potatoes in her room. Then one day, "I'm home! Oh, Ellen. Welcome back. What's up?" "Well, it's sudden, but I have to go on a business trip the day after tomorrow." "That's quite sudden, isn't it?" "Yeah, it's a project I was involved in, so I couldn't say no." "It can't be helped. I'll get your travel stuff ready." "Thanks, Ellen. I should be back in about 2 weeks." "Got it. But I wonder what Linda will say." "I'll talk to her. You don't have to worry about anything." So, I thought Linda, who adores Mark, would be upset about his 2-week trip. But, oh Mark, you're going on a business trip? That just shows how hard you're working. Take care. Surprisingly, she seemed really happy about it. Mark and I were puzzled, but thought maybe she's finally letting go a bit. Maybe her attitude towards me will change a bit too. Though I doubt things will go that smoothly. "Hey Ellen, did you clean up here?" "Yes, I did. Why?" "That's amazing! Not a speck of dust left. I'm impressed." "What?" "The hallway is clean too. Thanks for always keeping everything so tidy." Uh-oh, yeah, sure. Since Mark isn't here, how about we make something simple for dinner together? Just some nibbles? Okay. Oh, and I haven't changed the water for the flowers in the entrance yet. I'll take care of that. Surprisingly, ever since Mark left for his business trip, Linda has become suddenly nice to me. Huh? Maybe she's finally accepting me, having let go a bit. I felt a little happy thinking that. Despite all the things she said and did before, this might be the end of our troubles. If the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue is truly resolved, Maybe the three of us can get along well from now on. A week had passed since Mark went on his business trip. Ellen, I have a senior club meeting today, so I'll be out for a while. Okay, Linda, take care. Oh, and I'm in the mood for curry tonight. Could you make it for dinner? Your curry is really delicious. Curry? Sure, I can do that. I noticed we're out of potatoes in the kitchen, so feel free to use the ones I grew. Really? Is that okay? Of course! You've been working so hard lately. Oh, and I've already peeled and chopped them for you, so use those for the curry. Wow, thank you so much. I'll use them gratefully. Counting on you. I might be back late today, so feel free to eat without me. Understood. Have a safe trip. With that, Linda left cheerfully for her meeting. She seemed unusually happy today, maybe looking forward to her club. And after being so protective of her potatoes, what changed? She even peeled and chopped them for me. It's also the first time she's requested a specific meal. I didn't know she liked my curry. Does this mean she's finally accepting me as her son's wife? That would make me happy. Humming, I continued cleaning the entrance. Just then, the door opened. I'm home. Mark? What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip for 2 weeks? Yeah, but the work got done quicker than expected, so I came back early. That's good. Must be nice to be home early. Yeah, I've been looking forward to your cooking after all the fast food there. Flattering me won't get you anything special. It's just curry for dinner today. Curry? Lucky! Your curry is always delicious. That's what Linda said too. Wait, Mom said that? Yes, while you were away, Linda and I got along really well. Even after all the trouble you had with her? What happened? I don't fully understand myself, but it's definitely better than the constant sarcasm before. That's good to hear. Mom can be stubborn, and she wouldn't even listen to me. I put you through a lot, Mark. I'm sorry. But I think everything will be okay now. I'll try to get along with Linda. Okay. What's wrong, Mark? You seem a bit off. No, it's just that I heard a weird rumor from a neighbor before I left. A weird rumor? But it seems it was nothing. Just don't push yourself too hard, Ellen. I understand. Thanks. Mark seemed puzzled by the sudden change in Linda and me, but he didn't say anything more, probably preferring this to the previous tension. That day, I put extra effort into making the curry. I even splurged a bit, switching from our usual pork curry to beef curry. I hope Linda likes it. The curry was ready just as Mark came out of the shower. Linda hadn't returned yet. She did say she might be late when she left. It's natural. Meeting friends can lead to long conversations. Maybe she even went to a friend's house afterwards. Alright, it's ready! Wow, beef curry. That's rare for us, isn't it? Hey, that's rude. Ha! Just kidding. It looks delicious. Let's eat. Go ahead. Delicious. Your cooking is always the best, Ellen. Yeah. I brushed off Mark's compliment lightly, but inside, I was really pleased. It felt like it had been a while since we last ate together. I wonder if Linda will enjoy it too. As Mark savored the meal, he suddenly stopped eating. What's wrong? I just tasted something weird. Weird taste? I didn't add anything unusual. Not like a secret ingredient, it's just kind of sour. Sour? Let me try. Oh, wait, Ellen! Don't eat it! Huh? With that, Mark rushed to the bathroom. Confused, I stood there, dumbfounded. But I quickly snapped out of it and ran after him to the bathroom. Mark was crouched in the bathroom, looking in pain. I didn't understand what was happening, and could only rub his back. Mark? What's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? Are you in pain? What should I do? I need to call an ambulance right away. I managed to regain my composure and called for an ambulance. Meanwhile, Mark was sweating profusely and too weak to move. All I could do was pray for the ambulance to arrive quickly. About 10 minutes later, I heard the loud siren approaching our house. When I saw the paramedics at the door, I broke down in relief. They asked me various questions, but I couldn't explain why Mark was in such a state. I could only tell them he started feeling sick after eating the curry. They told me to accompany them in the ambulance, and I got in, wiping away tears. From there, things moved quickly. Mark was given an oxygen mask and rushed to the treatment room. I couldn't get into the treatment room, so I sat on a sofa outside, praying for his safety. About an hour later, a doctor came out of the room. "Doctor, is Mark okay?" "He's stable now. The pain has subsided and he's conscious. You can go in now." "Oh, thank goodness! Doctor, thank you. Thank you." "It's my duty, but yes? It seems like Mark has food poisoning." "Food poisoning? But the only thing Mark ate was the curry I made today." "That's odd. The food poisoning symptoms Mark exhibited aren't just from spoiled food, but rather from something highly toxic." "Toxic? What do you mean by that?" "It's very rare for food poisoning to worsen to this extent. Just to be safe, I think it's best to contact the police." "The police? Does that mean Mark might have been poisoned by someone?" "To determine that, it would be best if you could speak to the police." "Okay, I understand." Shocked by what the doctor told me, I couldn't stop shaking. Did I accidentally feed Mark something harmful? But I made the curry the same way I always do, and he's eaten it many times before. Still, given the situation, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd be the prime suspect. The thought made me restless. I desperately wanted to see Mark, to check on him. But I couldn't bring myself to enter the treatment room where he was. I kept thinking, what if Mark suspects me too? So I just sat there on the sofa. That's when Linda, having been contacted by the doctor, arrived at the hospital. "Oh, Linda! Ellen, what on earth happened?" I heard from the doctor that Mark got food poisoning because of the curry you made, and he was between life and death? What have you done?" "But the only thing Mark ate was the curry I made today. For that to cause food poisoning..." "No excuses! The fact is, Mark got food poisoning, right? And why is he back home already? He wasn't supposed to return until next week." "That's because his work finished earlier than expected." "Oh, so that's why Mark got food poisoning. He survived, I heard. But what if something had happened to him? All this happened because of you, Ellen." "But I didn't do anything." "And it wasn't just food poisoning, was it? Does that mean... Ellen, did you poison Mark?" "That's not true. Why would I do something like that?" "This is a serious crime. Ellen, I never thought you were such a person. I despise you." Linda wouldn't listen to me. I thought we had started to get along. But this? I understand being upset in such a situation. But to suspect me, his wife, first? But from the outside, it definitely looks like I'm the most likely suspect. And, with Linda's opinion, the police will only be more suspicious of me. Am I going to be arrested as a criminal? Usually, I would consult Mark when I'm troubled or anxious, but not this time. He's the victim after all. I felt overwhelmed by anxiety. After a while, the police arrived. As I expected, they questioned me first. Their questions made it clear they suspected me. "I didn't do it. Mark is my husband, a very important person to me. Why would I do something so awful?" However, Mark's symptoms were not typical of food poisoning. As the doctor said, there's a high likelihood that a toxic substance was involved. Considering the situation, you were the only one who could have poisoned Mark. "I agree! It couldn't have been anyone but Ellen in that situation." I don't know what to say to that. We need to examine the curry you made. Is that okay? Okay? Ellen, you finally showed your true colors. I thought you were a good daughter-in-law. But to think you felt this way about Mark? Linda, I was treated as if I was already guilty and was escorted by the police back to my house. But at that moment, the doctor who treated Mark stopped us. Wait a moment, please. What is it? Mark wants to talk to Ellen. You. Mark wants to? He probably wants to say some harsh words to you. You might not get another chance to see him, so why not go and see his face? Linda's words felt like a final blow, leaving me in despair. Am I really going to be arrested? What will Mark say to me? I want to see him, but I also don't. Overwhelmed by anxiety, I started crying. Despite my distress, the police and Linda ushered me into the treatment room. Mark was there, an IV in his arm and still wearing an oxygen mask. Seeing his pale face made me cry even more. I hadn't done anything wrong. But indeed, it was after eating my curry that Mark ended up like this. That fact tormented me even more. Ellen. Mark, it's not true. I didn't. I know. You're not the type to do such a thing. What are you saying, Mark? You got like this after eating the curry Ellen made. She must have put something in it. Mom, be quiet. Mark? I had never heard Mark raise his voice like that before. The atmosphere in the room shifted, making Linda and me fall silent. It was all planned by you, wasn't it, Mom? What? Mark? What are you... I heard it! Before I left on my business trip, I overheard you talking with the people from the senior club. What? Talking? What exactly did you hear? I couldn't hear it clearly from afar, but you said something about Ellen being a nuisance, better off gone. What? Wait, Mark! What are you talking about? I wanted to hear more, but I didn't have time, and I didn't want to believe that my own mother could think that way. Ellen, the curry you made, did you make it all by yourself? Yes, but did you get anything from Mom? Actually, I used the potatoes Linda gave me. What? What's that supposed to mean? I just gave you potatoes for the curry. Potatoes can become poisonous if they rot. A little might be okay, but if most of the potatoes in the curry were rotten, it's not surprising they turned toxic. Why would Mark know such a thing? Why? Because I've been helping with the gardening for years. It's not strange for me to know. Originally, I wasn't supposed to be back from my trip yet. So, the one who was supposed to eat this curry was... That means... Excuse me. Can I have the police outside the treatment room come in, please? What's the matter? It's likely my mother who poisoned the curry. What? Please check the potatoes in the curry. I think you'll find the poison there. They were the potatoes Mom grew. She never let us touch them. That's nonsense. Sure, I grew those potatoes, but even if they were rotten, I didn't know. I just wanted Ellen to make a delicious curry. That's why I prepared the potatoes. I'm not involved. As the police started to surround Linda, she frantically protested. So, that was it. Linda was happy when Mark left for his trip because he wouldn't eat the curry. Her sudden kindness towards me was to make sure I didn't suspect her potatoes. It was all Linda's plan. But where's the proof? The conversation Mark overheard could have been a misunderstanding. And even if I really thought of Ellen as a nuisance, that doesn't prove I tried to poison her. Mom, where were you talking to the senior club members? Where? Near Mr. Smith's house, I think. In front of his fancy car. Mr. Smith mentioned last month about his car being broken into, remember? I remember. But why does that matter? I was the one who told you about it. Mr. Smith installed a dash cam after that, Mark continued. What? He's wealthy, as you know, and he mentioned buying a high-performance dash cam. It records all the time, even when the car engine is off, and it captures audio, too. What? So, if Linda was talking about this plan then, it could all be recorded? Yeah. Could the police please check Mr. Smith's car's dash cam? Understood. Thank you for the information. Linda, we need you to come to the station. Wait! Wait, Mark! I did it for you! From Linda's reaction, it was clear she had slipped up about the plan. Her face ashen, she looked at Mark pleadingly. I did it for you! Marrying someone like her? You were just pitiable. Stop it! Ellen is more wonderful than I deserve. You have no right to say anything. You're not my mother anymore. I never want to see you again. No! I'm sorry for what happened this time. Please, I can't live without Mark. My pension isn't much. Linda kept saying something until the end, but she never apologized to me. From the start, Linda never liked me. She never even tried to like me. I felt foolish for trying so hard. But now, I felt relieved. I no longer have to force myself to be with Linda. A week later, Mark was discharged from the hospital. He had no lasting effects and looked just like his usual self, which deeply comforted me. Let's toast to Mark's discharge. You're being dramatic. But thanks. Cheers. I'm glad the move went smoothly. Yeah, the old house was cramped, and we were thinking of building a new one anyway, so this worked out well. We left our old house and moved to a new one. Mark thought it best since Linda might come to the old house, and neither of us wanted to stay there after what happened. I'm sorry. It's because of me. It's not your fault, Ellen. It's all Mom's doing. Well, we've cut ties with her now. Are you really okay with that? Yeah. After she tried to do that to you, it's only natural. Mark? I'm sorry for making you endure so much. From now on, you can do as you wish. Thank you. Apparently, Linda was arrested later. She had been bossy in the senior club too, and wasn't well liked. It's ironic she looked forward to the club meetings so much. Of course, we didn't visit her, and it seems she had no friends either. Perhaps no one visits her. Alone in a dark place? It's sad, but it's her own doing.